Well, we've made it to the end. The Fremen have breached the shields and sabotaged the Emperor's ships. Paul reclaims the governor's mansion in Arrakeen. He also accepts that he's the Kwisatz Haderach and finally confronts the Emperor, though there's a challenge that looms with Feyd Rautha. We'll be talking about all this and more on our final deep dive discussion into Dune by Frank Herbert, here on the Doctors Who podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Doctors Who podcast. My name is Chris.
My name is Chip.
My name is Bro.
Okay, so this is our last episode. Episode? Huh.
Sounds
it does, or
French.
Canadian. Or French Canadian.
Or snotty.
Oh.
No. It's episode.
All synonyms. It's all right.
Yeah, I'm French
If
Canadian.
you're-
French Canadian.
If you're watching this and you say episode, don't pay attention to Chip. He did not mean to call you snotty. Okay, anyway, it is our last episode of discussing
down.
Dune. This is the 20th episode, and we are going to cover the last two sections of the novel. So, what we're going to do is we're going to jump into our individual thoughts and impressions, and then we're going to kind of dissect those ideas a little bit more. So we'll start with Chip. We will go straight to Brian, and then I'll be the caboose. I'll bring it home. But
Chris.
before we do that, we are very quickly going to tell you about N. Imerman Design Company. Nick has done the logo work as well as all the overlay work for our social media accounts as well as our YouTube episodes. If you need a graphic designer, we recommend you check him out at nimerman.com or find him on Instagram at nimerman_design. All right. Chip, you're up.
I'm up, huh? So these final two sections, there's so much that's gone on to get to this point in the book. I think that Herbert does a masterful job of tying up the storylines that he really needs to tie up, but then leaving it open for potential sequels, which we know he wrote 5 of. But had those sequels not been written, I think that Dune would stand on its own as just a standalone book. And I would have been perfectly happy if it ended here. I'm glad it didn't, but I like the way that he ties up these loose ends. The other thing that and I've always loved the character of Alia, and I think this is I can't remember if it's my 4th or 5th time reading through it, but for a character that only is in really a couple of scenes, she just steals every scene that she's in. And her interaction between the Baron and the Reverend Mother, his truthsayer, and the Emperor, I guess she's the Emperor's truthsayer. But that whole interaction I just smile every time I read it because she just owns them completely.
Man, you really stole my thunder there. I loved the scene with Alia. I mean, it's just a very character that is so appealing and also so like disconcerting at the same time. Like, oh, my brother is coming. He knows I'm here. Whoa! Hold, like, that just almost knocked me over. Like, I was like, am I really reading this? But you said it so well too, that there is so much going on in the last couple sections, and it's all really led up to this. We knew that there was going to be this eventual confrontation of the Emperor. We knew that something was going to happen with the Baron, and we also knew something would happen with Feyd as well. It was kind of foretold that this would happen, and it sounds kind of strange for me to say, but my version of the book, my copy of the book, has about 790 pages in it. I feel like this book could have been a little longer, but I felt like there was so much that happened in those last two sections. It just could have been expanded upon a little bit more, but it was well done enough where, as you said, Chip, this really felt like it could have been a standalone book. Whether or not we end up reading the subsequent books or not remains to be seen. We might, spoilers, we'll be picking a new book soon. But it was just such a great ending, and it really, really was an easy last couple sections for me to read.
Okay. So for me, uh, what made this compelling was the relationships and the interactions between the characters. I will piggyback on what you both said, and I will say Alia is just such a fascinating character to read about and to see how other characters react to what she says. There's an instance where she somehow leaves a memory to Paul to find, in the future that she's okay. And oh, by the way, she killed their grandfather. I mean, and she's like, oh, this is something that even you can do. So I thought that was just kind of cool how they're showcasing that she is something more than we would have assumed or gathered, and that she probably has a larger role to play. I did think that this did end very quickly. Like, I think we ended up there. In my copy of the book, there are 37 or 38 pages in the two sections we're covering. And we talked a little bit about how this resembled the Sanderlanche last time, and I think that definitely holds true. So, yeah. All right. Let's talk about Alia, since we all seem to really kind of hone in on those scenes.
Yeah, I just love the fact that, she's a 4-year-old child, roughly. I think she's around 4 at this point. But she's so fully realized in the fact that she basically exists in the Reverend Mother's head and can do all these different things. And the way she just completely manipulates the people around her it's fun and it's fascinating. And, it's like they have no power against her. She's just a great character for having really, I think there's really only about 2 scenes where she says much in the whole book. And this one's my favorite by far.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head with just the size of her and the age of her does not even begin to explain her. We capture the Muad'dib sister. No, I let you get me. Like, what?
Well,
but
and
just
she was leading the Fremen forces, or the
right.
or the
Yeah.
Sardaukar force. No, she was leading the Fremen forces
She was
against the
leading
Sardaukar.
the
Yeah,
Fremen forces.
yeah.
Against,
Yeah,
yes.
and the Emperor was pissed because they took out so many of his Sardaukar, and it was, women and children and old men, and how could they
Yeah, I think
possibly
he
do
said they
that?
sent in like 5 troop carriers, and they got out with 1. So,
Mhm.
so the Reverend Mother, and this is not Jessica, the Reverend Mother, right? This is Reverend Mother Helena
Helen
Gaius
Gaius Helen
Baltar,
William
whatever her name is. But yeah,
Starbuck.
she says
Starbuck.
that Alia is in her mind, and the Emperor's like, what, like telepathy? She's like, no. She's like the ones before me, the ones who gave me their memories. She cannot be there, but she is. So to me, that reads that when Bene Gesserit and Reverend Mothers are able to go in and access the shared memories of all those that came before her, Alia is there too, which is kind of bonkers.
Well, she basically ascended at the same time that Jessica did.
But
when they drank the water of
I
life.
don't get the impression that Jessica is in the Reverend Mother Helena's memories. So
No.
something
So
else
there's got to be
happened.
something else there.
So I thought that was fascinating.
Was fascinating. And to jump ahead a little bit, but still with this Reverend Mother, I did not realize until I kind of flipped back through it afterward but this is Reverend Mother that we've seen before.
She's the one
From the
that
beginning,
visited
yeah.
Paul.
Yeah.
The first scene of the book,
Yep.
almost, wasn't it?
It was a nice kind of a callback to a character that I kind of forgot about until this point. So I thought that the character
Don't let me interrupt you. I'll just chip in when you're done. I get it. Chip
Oh,
in.
no, you're.
Yeah, I see what you did there.
You're good.
I was just gonna say, I don't think at the very beginning they didn't say anything about her being the Emperor's truthsayer, did they? She was just the Reverend Mother come to
No.
assess whether Paul was human or not.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Right.
And she says something else, like when the Emperor is dressing down the Baron, and she says, oh, where is it? Make him afraid some more, Shaddam. She's like, ooh, keep scaring him. I like this. But that brings up another point I wanted to make, is that this is the first time that we see the Baron actually being, I think, truly fearful. Like, he's always supremely overconfident to his undoing. But this is the first time we see him actually afraid of what's going to happen.
I am a little surprised.
Go ahead. Brian.
I am a little surprised he made it to the end of the book. I mean, he seemed like his life was in danger so many other times up to now. Like, it felt like he could have been offed before. I'm kind of surprised that he hung on as long as he did. Although, yeah, he came to a pretty grisly end, though.
I felt like he needed to be offed by an Atreides, though. That even if it had been Twofer, it probably wouldn't have been quite as juicy an ending. But
that's a good point.
The way that it did end, and in some ways, I'm glad it wasn't Paul that took him out. I'm glad that it was Alia and the way she did it, and how casually she did it. Just
with the Gom Jabbar.
Just a great character. Yeah.
And, you know, we did hear at the very beginning that if you get pricked by the Gom Jabbar, you die. So, and she did say, because I referenced this earlier when I was talking about the things that I liked, like she was able to basically put a message to Paul, like in the future. And she did say that she killed him and it was relatively painless or something like that. So,
yeah. But she also talks about or mentions that the Baron is her grandfather. Doesn't she say, "I'm sorry, grandfather"? Right when she kills him, basically.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I've heard anyone voice that other than, between Paul and, he figured it out, and Jessica, knew, but I don't think it was ever voiced anywhere, like in anyone else's presence, that the Baron was actually Jessica's father and therefore Paul and Alia's grandfather.
Well, I don't know that anyone outside the Bene Gesserit knew.
Well, the Reverend Mother kind of was taken aback by that too, and I don't know if it was because I don't know if she didn't realize it or if she just was so surprised that someone said it out loud. But it seemed like asked.
But does this go back to the whole breeding program too? And that, when she was upset that Jessica had born a son instead of a daughter for the Duke, would that have made sense then from the bloodlines? Had they were both coming from the same bloodline, but had they had a male and female to bring back together to tie this bloodline off? Is that? Yeah, I don't know. It kind of throws a wrinkle into some of that too.
I think the Bene Gesserit intent, if I remember correctly, was that they wanted to wed an Atreides daughter to the male Harkonnen heir, which would then produce
Feyd.
the Kwisatz Haderach. So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But the other thing, so talking about the Kwisatz Haderach here, and I think we're getting way ahead now, but we can jump back. But they mentioned that Count Fenring was nearly the Kwisatz Haderach, or he had a lot of the same. I don't know if he was part of the breeding program. I mean, we don't know how long the breeding program's gone on either.
Yeah.
But the fact that he must have been part of it and had some skills or powers that he possessed and had some sort of a. Yeah, but he had some sort of a empathy towards Paul, so that he couldn't kill him like the Emperor wanted him to.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a
It
little
is,
ways
yeah.
ahead here yet. We're still talking about the Baron and the Emperor and all that
Right.
stuff.
So it's in the last episode, so part 19 for those keeping track at home, we kind of referenced, the previous section was Paul and Gurney and Stilgar like on the shield wall scouting out like the fortifications and who was there and things like that, and they talked about their use of atomics and how they were going to bring the worms in and the storm was coming and all that jazz. So now we're actually seeing that from the perspective of the Emperor and the people inside Arrakeen. And there's kind of a neat part where they hear the shield wall go and they see the worms come in with the storm and they see the Fremen on top, and it says that the Sardaukar basically stop in their tracks at the sight of these Fremen coming in riding these worms and like jumping off and engaging them. So, the mighty feared Sardaukar are reduced to open-mouthed idiots for a second there, and I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, I do like that, in that scene, we don't actually see it happen, but they capture a Sardaukar trooper who then Paul sends to the Emperor to say, send the Emperor to the governor's mansion.
Right.
Basically, send the Emperor to see me.
Yeah. Yep. But that's kind of like that first section. The Emperor, well,
yeah, it's mostly that.
the one thing I really liked at the beginning, though, was that the Emperor was able to find out so much more of what was happening than the Baron had. Because I thought it was the Harkonnens that raided the Sietch and killed Paul's son and took Alia captive when I read the previous section, but it was actually the Emperor's forces that did that, and he's the one that devised that that Muad'dib was Paul and all of these things. And so I think that kind of speaks to the Baron's overconfidence and not taking the Fremen seriously, which we've talked about before. But I like the way he just kind of went along with it and then just like did the big reveal, like dropped Alia in front of the Baron and was like, oh, by the way, this is Muad'Dib's sister and she's an Atreides and you screwed up.
Yep.
It was really good.
I do get the feeling. I do get the feeling though that even if Alia hadn't finished him off, that the Baron would not have made it past this point anyway.
Sure.
Like one too many failures there, Baron.
Yeah. But it is interesting how he just kind of almost like Alia toys with them. The Emperor's kind of toying with the Baron. It's like, do you have any idea who this Muad'Dib could be? Blah 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 blah. Are you sure you don't know any more about him?
He's a religious fanatic. They crop up frequently in the wild.
They're all a little mad.
Good stuff. Yeah. But okay, should we go to the next section?
Yeah. The finale.
I mean, and this is after the fighting is done and the Fremen have been victorious, and I think it's kind of cool that Paul chooses to go and retake the mansion at Arrakeen. He's like, by occupying this mansion, which Rabban was occupying, it kind of cedes Muad'Dib's victory over the Emperor and the Sardaukar. So that was cool. And then you also get that emotional resonance of being in the place where they first came all those years ago. And you see that,
and where his father was killed, and where the Harkonnen sprung their trap, and
Paul notices
everything's come full circle.
He can see even just like a change in the way Jessica carries herself being back in here. So,
well, didn't she go to the weirding room or somewhere? She kind of misses Caladan and the plants.
Yeah, exactly. So and this is that point where Paul receives the message that Alia had sent him, and she said, I have breasted the future to place my words where only you can hear them. Even you cannot do that, my brother. I find it an interesting play, and, oh yes, I've killed our grandfather, the demented old Baron. So...
Oh, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there are some things that happen here. So, Paul makes a reference to Caladan, where water falls from the sky, and Stilgar makes the comment like, "Water falls from the sky," and Paul has a revelation here that Stilgar has gone from a friend to basically a worshiper or a tool. So he's starting to realize that with everything he's doing, he's separating himself from those people that he called friends. Like they can't relate to him. They're starting to see the legend instead of the man anymore. So that was kind of a bummer.
Yeah. Never had that happen to me.
Only on Tuesdays here.
Oh yeah.
Thankfully it's Wednesday. You guys are safe. Anyway.
Yeah, there was so much that happened in this scene though. I mean, at this point, Paul is like, well, and now the Emperor is going to arrive here, and he's going to bring his men in. And by the way, they've killed the Baron, and like he's not like being a prophet, but he's just like, all right, well, these things are happening right now, and you guys get out of the way because they're going to line up over there. And
Right.
it was really like a total transformation because, this third section, the prophet, was like the coming into his prophetic abilities, but now he has fully realized everything around him, and he is the one.
He's accepted that he's the Kwisatz
He
Haderach.
can be many places at once. Yeah.
Yeah, so at this point, he sent the Sardaukar trooper to go and retrieve the Baron, or retrieve the Emperor. Everybody shows up, and I love the interaction here where the Emperor keeps kind of trying to throw things in his way that, well, I'll just have all the ships on, that are in orbit, just basically come down and thrash you and take you out. And he's like, oh, no, you won't. He's like, because there's a couple of guild members here, too.
And they're actually navigators.
There's two of them, right?
They're navigators,
so
masquerading
as the spice and
just representatives, right? And so when he says, I can destroy the spice...
So when he threatens to say, I can just... because he controls a thing, can destroy a thing, and they're just like, ooh,
shoot.
Whoa.
And then he's like, so you acknowledge I can do that. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And I assumed these were the same two that one of them lost a contact lens. Do you suppose these were the same two that were in the prior scene? Because one of them lost a contact lens, and his eyes were completely blue.
Yeah.
Well, it was in this scene that I think he's like, you're navigators, and they both said yes. So they're actually the spice dependent guild navigators.
They're the mutated guild
ones,
navigators
that are actually flying
that actually control space, and
So so they would definitely miss the spice, and they talk about very briefly what would happen. You wouldn't be able to move from planet to planet. Humanity would exist in these isolated pockets, and nobody in the Imperium wants to consider that fact, which is why the threat Paul is making carries so much weight.
And the threat that the Emperor made is pretty empty.
Yes. Yes.
I think even before that is our final scene with Twofer.
It is.
Before the threats start. Yes. And that one was kind of a touching scene and well played out that, they thought, oh, we'll get this ace in the hole. Twofer's got this poison needle. He's going to kill Paul for us. And that doesn't happen. And, Paul realizes pretty quickly that Twofer's dying and just comforts him. And it's...
Yeah, because he took the needle that he was supposed to get Paul with, I think, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
But I thought he basically, maybe I'll have to go find that scene, but yeah, he was just there as Twofer died, basically.
Yeah. Yep, and it kind of confirmed our suspicions that he was playing along with the Baron the whole time, but ultimately was still
He was so loyal to
right.
the
Yeah,
Atreides.
and I mean, he
Yeah.
made his apology to the Lady Jessica. It's just basically his dying words that he, kind of stumbled forward. He was dying. He said, Lady Jessica, I've but learned this day how I've wronged you in my thoughts. You needn't
Yeah.
forgive.
Yep. Yeah.
And I think that last line though is this is kind of an interesting line too. When Paul says, "To for old friend, as you can see, my back is toward no door." But then Hammett says, "The universe is full of doors."
Wise words.
Yeah.
Well, I mean that harkens back to one of the early scenes where Thufir comes into the room and Paul's sitting with his back to the door and he chastises him for it. So, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right before the assassin droid, if I recall.
This was
Maybe it was even
early
before
on.
that.
This was still on
maybe?
Caladan, I thought.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Because I think that's where Paul says
Oh,
he heard
yeah.
Gurney,
I'm thinking
Thufir,
Yui. My bad.
and Yue coming down the hall, and
there's also some interactions between Paul and the Reverend Mother Helena as well, which are kind of interesting. Because he makes the comment, if you look in that place that you're afraid to go, you'll see me staring back at you, or something like that, which basically she's like, oh crap, okay, you're the real deal.
yeah.
So, yeah. But the fight with Feyd, how it's kind of, because Gurney wants to be the one to kill a Harkonnen, but Feyd calls the Canley or something like that, which means Paul feels obligated to fight him. And that's kind of an interesting scene to me because there's just like so much second guessing on Paul's part. He's like, oh, well, okay, so there's probably some poison, but it looks like maybe he's concealing like a needle or something. So, and he's just like, he's trying to second guess and figure out what Feyd is doing because his prescience isn't touching this moment, which I find kind of interesting. But, yeah.
And I like too how it's Gurney tries to step forward and fight on Paul's behalf, but ultimately Paul won't let him. But
Well, he's wise in thinking because this could go one of two ways. I mean, he's kind of in uncharted water. He's run out of steam after this long day of like preparing and fighting. And then he's like, well, if I live, then I die and then I am truly the one. But if I die, I'll become a martyr and then my spirit will lead them on from this place. So like win or lose, I'm going to win.
Either way, this thing's happening.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not a long fight. It's not like a long drawn out battle, which I think is fine because if you think about it, a knife fight probably isn't very long.
True.
But after that is done, Paul is focused on the princess who is there because he's the key to Paul getting the throne. And that's where we talked about earlier, where the Emperor's like, Count Fenring, you can kill him, do this thing, and the Count's like, nope, not gonna happen. And the Reverend Mother and the Emperor are talking back and forth, and finally he has to relent because he realizes the guild navigators are like, nope, we're not doing anything. We've talked to the ships, and yeah, so
Yeah.
and it's interesting how quickly it just all wraps up.
Yeah, as I said in my kind of hot take, I thought this could have been taken out a little bit longer. I mean, the book is long already, and you don't want to just needlessly add in scenes, but I feel like there is so much that really built up to and then resolved itself, that it could have been extended a little bit longer. But as we talked about at the very beginning, even leading into this book, this was originally published in several sections.
Sure.
And I almost wonder if the editors were like, we've got 20 sections for you to print your article, so wrap it up in 20 or something like that. So I almost wonder if this was like a deadline piece or, something where you had to just trim stuff down. But I mean, it's still well enough that, I mean, I was certainly happy with the book.
Well, it could have been just a publishing thing too, that he had to trim it down, just from a pure size of the book. Because I thought it was Lord of the Rings that Tolkien had written as really one big book, but they couldn't publish it as one big book.
Logistically
at the time that it was written, because it was
pages. Yeah.
Right. So he may have been restricted to, you need to keep this under 600 pages or whatever it ended up being, or that otherwise we can't publish it as a single book physically. But maybe I really don't know. The other thing is, just from an authorship standpoint, and a lot of authors will say this, and having tried to write things myself, it's not easy. Just the whole dismount from a big story is not an easy thing to do. So it might feel rushed at times and it might feel abrupt, but how else do you end it?
And speaking of endings, I thought this was very interesting, because he basically is saying, I'm going to take the Princess Irulan as my wife. And then he tells Chani, he's like, don't worry, she's not getting a darn thing from me. I'm yours. This is just political gain.
He's basically, I'm securing an emperorship.
And
I like how he just kind of lays out, this is how it's all going to play out. And this is what's going to happen. And that's it. He's going to give Gurney, does he give Gurney something like earldom, and give him a fief on Caladan and stuff. I don't know. There's something with the Chom Company holdings too, that he's,
the
negotiating for that.
Chom Company holdings will be dowry.
Yeah.
Right.
Chani is concerned, right? I mean, she's putting on a brave face and all that, and Jessica takes her aside and she's like, do you know so little of my son? See that princess standing there, so haughty and confident? They say she has pretensions of a literary nature. Let us hope she finds solace in such things, because she'll have little else. Think on it. That princess will have the name, yet she'll live as less than a concubine, never to know a moment of tenderness from the man to whom she's bound. Well, we, Chani, we who carry the name of concubine, history will call us wives. And that's the end of the book. That's where he ends it. Just... So...
Well, I do like how she ends, how Herbert ends it here with Jessica making those statements, because you think about how much strife there was in the Atreides house at the beginning, because the Duke didn't have a wife. All he had was Jessica. And so this is like the fulfillment of Jessica as well as Paul.
And Jessica was,
because this is sort of
just really disproving of Jon Snow. Oh wait, that's not right.
Wait, hold on.
Oh, he was the bastard in the... Wait.
Was he the one
Yeah,
in the Dagobah system?
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
Okay.
Grogu.
Don't do that while I'm drinking. Anyway. That is Dune. So... Let's kind of talk.
That is, and there are 5 more books that it leads into, which goes a lot of different directions.
Not necessarily the directions.
Those are discussions for another day.
But it's still worth reading.
It's part of Paul's terrible purpose.
So the next episode, we're just going to kind of do a high-level review of the overall book. We know we've spent 20 episodes discussing in detail. But I think we just want to go back and we want to give just a high level, here's what we think. And then at the end, we will let you know what book we will be tackling next time. So that's our...
There may have been a hint at the very beginning of this episode.
There might have been, yeah. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to do my spiel. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button below. If you would like to keep in contact with us, we recommend the comment section. If you want to know when we're posting new material, you can subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell. Again, we thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next time, and until then...
Allons-y.